Welcome to CBJ and 30.
I'm sure this will be a real bonding experience. Maybe one day, one of you will even write a book about it in jail.
You give us 30 minutes, and we'll give you all you want to know about your Columbus Blue Jackets and the NHL.
Okay, guys, show us what you got.
Now here's your host, who has a few opinions of his own.
Well, Lottie frickin' da!
Bob McElligott.
Baby, everything is alright. Uptight, out of sight. Baby, everything is alright. Uptight, clean out of sight.
Yes, everything is all right, although there were some tense moments last night at Nationwide Arena when the Blue Jackets played against the Boston Bruins, a game they eventually won by the score of 4-3. Welcome to CBJ and 30. Today, it's a mailbag edition of the show. Didn't have a show on Monday. Usually do the Monday mailbag, but because there was no show on Monday, we'll make up for it today. So welcome, wherever you're listening from today. And I've got to tell you, I met a guy last night. He was in with the Safe Flight Auto people after the game, and he told me he lives in Florida, and he listens to this podcast every day. So thank you, number one, is what I want to say. And wherever you are today, welcome. Here's another thing, now that I think about that. Send me a tweet at Bobby Mac Sports. Let me know where you listen to this show from. I'm just interested because I always think that I do the show and maybe it's somebody right down the street, or maybe it's somebody in Columbus, maybe it's somebody in Dublin and Westerville, and here it is all over the world. And I get a breakdown. I know where people are listening from in general, but I'd like to know where you're listening to CBJ and 30 from, so you can send me a tweet at Bobby Mac Sports and let me know. I had a lot of people send me tweets today with questions about the Blue Jackets, and I will get to those in just a few moments. But let's talk about last night's game. Let's talk about the way the Blue Jackets came out and established themselves in the first 3 minutes against the Boston Bruins. The first 10 minutes, 3 goals in 10 minutes against the Boston Bruins last night. Once they started to score, I thought it was going to be a Pittsburgh-like period against the Bruins. And that goes back to that third period against the Penguins last week when the Blue Jackets just took shots and every shot wound up in the back of the net. It was looking like that, and it was really surprising to me that they got 3 goals so quickly, especially against a goaltender like Tuukka Rask, who came into the game giving up less than 2 goals per game. And all of a sudden, with 10 minutes expired, he had given up 3 goals already. So that was a little bit surprising to me. But the Blue Jackets had the advantage. They were the home team. They're coming out of the Christmas break. They didn't have to travel. They're the home team. They had a chance to seize the energy early, and that's exactly what they did. But the Boston Bruins, and I said this at the time, I said when it was 3-0, I said the Blue Jackets don't have to think about anything but opening night, when the Blue Jackets had leads of 2-0 and 3-1, and the Boston Bruins came back and erased those 2 leads and eventually went on to win the game by the score of 6-3. Remember that? That started to come back very quickly last night as soon as David Backes scored and made it a 3-1 game. And then Austin Czarnik scored and made it a 3-2 game. So all of a sudden, the breathing room was gone. The Blue Jackets were in a 1-goal game. And then late in the second period, David Krejci goes to the front of the net, and he scores to make it 3-3. And now it's a rather unsettling feeling at Nationwide Arena. Really, to me it was. It was an unsettling feeling because you're going to the third period. You had a 3-goal lead. It is now gone. And it's gone to one of the teams that has been your biggest nemesis this year. And I realize it was earlier in the year when the Blue Jackets and the Bruins played, and I talked about this on yesterday's show. The Blue Jackets are a different team now than they were then. But you know what? The fact of the matter is sometimes teams just have your number. And the Boston Bruins look like one of those teams that potentially has the Blue Jackets number based on the 2 early performances. Now, here they come. They roar back from being 3 goals down, and they're sitting in a position where they could take the lead for the very first time in the third period. However, that never happened, which just illustrates that the Blue Jackets are a much different team now than they were early in the season when they played against the Boston Bruins. Ironically, to me, it was the penalty kill that really sparked the Blue Jackets in the third period. And I'm not talking about the late penalty kill when Seth Jones took a penalty. I'm talking about the one prior to the goal. They had to kill off a penalty, and then they wound up getting a power play a short time later, and Nick Foligno cashed in on that, which turns out to be the game winner as the Blue Jackets skate away with a 4-3 victory last night. But the penalty kill, which was it's kind of mired in the middle of the league right now. They came in last night 12th in the penalty kill, which is, it's okay, but it's almost middle of the road, right? 30 teams, it's almost the middle of the road. Well, they had a great penalty kill in the third period, and that really seemed to spark the team. And then they go on, as I said, they get a power play chance. Foligno scores later in the game. Seth Jones takes a cross-checking penalty. They have to kill off another. They do a great job at that. And really, at the end of the game, it's not counted as a power play, but with the goaltender pooled at 6-on-5, it's man advantage for the Boston Bruins, and the Blue Jackets were able to kill off that. So they really seemed like they got composed with the penalty kill. And Nick Foligno said after the game, you've got to find different things to spark you at different times, and he felt that their defense sparked them to win the game last night, and I totally agree. So it all turns out great. There are some red flags for me, though. There are some signs that I don't like that I've seen in the last 2 games. In fact, I'll go a step further. There are some things I didn't like in 3 of the last 4 games that I've seen from the Blue Jackets that are a little bit worrisome. And not so much worrisome in ending the streak, because the streak is going to end. At some point, the streak is going to end. 13 straight, that's great. I mean, you're in the upper echelon of longest winning streaks ever in NHL history right now. So the streak is going to end at some point. That's a foregone conclusion. But what you don't want to have happen, and John Tortorella told me this on this show yesterday. You can go back and listen to it if you want. He said it falls apart very quickly. And he's right. Because you can be on top of the world and then you can be at the bottom of the heap. If you don't play your cards right, if you're not paying attention to your own game, that's how quickly it can turn around. Speaking of John Tortorella, he had what I thought was a very entertaining post-game press conference last night. In fact, it's a very short press conference, so I might as well play it for you right now.
John, just the two penalty kills at the end of the game. The first one seemed to give you guys a little bit of a boost there.
Special teams wins the game for us. We do squat 5-on-5.
It's 3-0 early. I think you guys were like off to the races there. Did you feel like it was going to be a blowout at that point?
No. It happened so quickly and so easy. You knew it was going to be one of those games. I felt it right away. I'm not saying it because it happened that way. I just felt it right away. It was a slop fest. So,
is it a game to get out of the way, John?
It is.
Coming off the break,
I lit a match to the tape already. It's done. It's burnt. Seriously, we don't even look at it.
Does this 13-game thing feel in any way?
We don't think about it. You guys do.
You don't think about it at all? You don't think the players think about it at all?
I'm not sure if the players do. I don't. As far as us preparing them, we're just trying to go about our business and get ready for each game.
It seemed like for so long earlier in the year we were saying, well, Bob's winning, but he hasn't had to be great. He's had to be really good the last several games. Do you agree?
Yeah, but I think we've put some good minutes in the games too.
And that's essentially it. That's all he had to say after the game. It was a slop fest. I love that term. A slop fest. Yes, that means he didn't like the way it was played, obviously. He didn't like what his team did. He didn't really like what the Boston Bruins did. He felt that it was a game coming out of the break of 2 teams that were not on top of their game, and his team did get the victory, but that doesn't mean that he's pleased with the way that they went about it. And again, this is his messaging. This is the way he's going to carry it. He's going to make sure that his team is not satisfied just with a victory last night, that they know that they didn't win the right way, that they know they didn't do the right things, that they know if they continue to play like that, there are bad things on the horizon, not continued wins. That's the message he is already trying to plant, and I'm sure he's going to do the same thing at practice today. So 4-3 win for the Blue Jackets last night. They've now won 13 straight games. They play in Winnipeg tomorrow. That is not going to be an easy game, I'll tell you that. The Winnipeg Jets coming off a win over the Chicago Blackhawks on the road last night. So we can talk about that maybe later in the show. Maybe we'll wait until tomorrow. But right now, I've promised you that I'm going to take your questions. So let's open the CBJ in 30 mailbag.
I want to know what you're thinking. There are some things you can't hide. I want to know what you're feeling. Tell me what's on your mind.
First question today comes from Kevin Zuckerman, who says, besides Matt Calvert's game-winning shorthanded goal versus the New York Rangers, what has been your favorite goal or goals from this season? Top 5, maybe? Well, Kevin, thinking about it, the Matt Calvert goal certainly is right there. It might be number 1 for me. Just when you look at the entire scope of that game, how he took the slap shot off the forehead, he came back with the bandage wrapped around his head, gets a shorthanded game-winning goal. I think that one ranks at number 1 for me for sure. The Seth Jones game-winning goal in overtime in Vancouver is one of my favorites of the year, too. The rest of them, I'd have to go through and I'd have to think about them. Maybe the Scott Hartnell goal that capped his hat trick against the Pittsburgh Penguins the other night. Kind of a dirty goal, nothing that was flashy, just a typical Scott Hartnell grinding type goal. That might make the list too. I think what we'll do is put together somewhat of a top 10 list of goals to this point of the season and have that for you in the next couple of days. I've got an intern named Dylan who's fantastic at putting things together and really likes to get into this kind of stuff. So we'll go back and we'll pull out some goals and put that together for you in the next couple of days, Kevin. But the Calvert goal certainly is right there at the top of my list, and the Seth Jones overtime winner in Vancouver. I like that one as well. Jason R. says, can you tell us what you're hearing about Vitaly Abramov and also the significance of him being signed right now if his clock starts? His clock doesn't start. You can sign the entry-level contract, but your clock doesn't start until you're within the organization and you play either with the Cleveland Monsters or you play with the Blue Jackets. So you can sign the guy right now. It doesn't count for anything, as a matter of fact, until he comes into the organization and starts playing. So, he was a guy that, if you go back to development camp, he was a standout guy, small guy, feisty, tough to play against, and they like him a lot. So we'll see what gives. But, right now, I've told you this before, I'm going to tell you again, and I'm not trying to put you down at all, Jason. I understand the significance of your question, but right now, in the midst of what's going on here, the last thing I'm worried about is a prospect. And I understand that you're worried about him, and I think that he's going to be a very viable part. He could potentially be a viable part of what happens here as we go down the line in future years. But, right now, the focus for me is on this team, so I'm not really hearing a lot about him. I'm hearing what you hear. He signed the contract. They like him a lot. He's playing well where he is, and they hope that he's going to play well in this organization sometime in the near future. Chad Held says, I've got one question. Can you tell us what the heck is going on with these guys? I love it. Well, what's going on with them? They enjoy being around each other. They enjoy playing the game. They're playing it hard. They're, on most nights, playing it the right way, and they're coming up with victories. So that's really all it is. It's very simple what's going on with this team. They're just playing the game, and they're playing it with passion, and they are getting the results that they want to get. Chris 26A says, what is important for the Blue Jackets to do to maintain the way they are playing? Chris, I think it's really just the approach that they have right now, and you may get sick of John Tortorella talking about the day-by-day, taking everything day by day. Maybe you're tired of hearing that from him ad nauseum, but I think it is a message that is resonating with his team. And they're repeating the same phrases in the dressing room after the game. We're just taking it one game at a time. And sure, it's a cliche. And sure, they're thinking about the fact that they've had a lot of success for weeks on end here. But if they change their mindset, then they're putting themselves in jeopardy of having the results change as well. So to be honest with you, Chris, I think they just have to keep on approaching it just the way that they are. Next question comes from Justin Holt. I don't know what's more entertaining, watching the Blue Jackets score or listening to the crazy things Bobby Mack Sports says in his excitement. I don't consider them crazy. I consider them maybe a little bit on the edge or over, but believe me when I tell you this, Justin, they are very well calculated by a very perceptive mind. The next question comes from Justin Needham, who says, I hope this win keeps Boston out of the playoffs. And how many players off one team can be selected to the All-Star game? Well, Justin, let's just go right to the NHL rules about the All-Star fan vote and all that stuff, because you know what happened last year. John Scott got voted into the game. The NHL tried its best to squash his appearance in the game. They couldn't do it. The people spoke. John Scott was in the game. He was a hero in the game, and now they're looking to make a movie about his life. Okay? So they don't want that to happen again. They don't want somebody to get larger than life again, that somebody wants to make a movie about their life. So let me just go right here to NHL.com and read for you the rules as far as the voting goes and go from there, okay? The 2017 NHL All-Star Fan Vote will allow fans to vote for one All-Star player from each division without regard to position. The top vote getter from each division will be named an NHL All-Star as well as captain of his respective team. Eligible players must be on an NHL club's active roster on November 1st, as of November 1st. Any player not on the active roster on that date due to injury or special circumstances can be added to the ballot if and when he returns to the NHL club's active roster. See, so that's so that you don't have a Patrick Kane or a Sidney Crosby or somebody like that that's injured and not playing on November 1st, that you're able to go back and make sure he can play. But if you're a John Scott and you're not there November 1st, then they can find a way to keep you off the thing altogether. If a player is assigned or loaned to the American Hockey League or any other minor league team between November 1st at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and January 6th, the January 26th, wait a minute, let me read that again. If any player is added to an American Hockey League team or any other minor league team between November 1st and 5 p.m. on January 26th, okay, the player is not eligible in all-star balloting. However, if the minor league assignment or loan is due to conditioning reasons, the player remains eligible. In the event a vote leader is disqualified due to a minor league assignment or loan or any other reason, after the close of the NHL All-Star Fan Vote on January 2nd, the player with the second most votes in that division will be named captain. Fans will be permitted to vote for a player from a list of all players that meet these eligibility guidelines. The list of eligible players will be updated as players are assigned to a minor league team or returned from injured reserve. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of hogwash, right? That's exactly what it is. But those are the rules. So you're just voting for the captains, and then they'll select from there. So that's a big way of saying, Justin, I'm not sure exactly what it is, and I think the NHL wants it that way. They want it with confusion to make sure that they don't have somebody in that game again that they really don't want in that game. That's just speculation. I'm just guessing, but that's not going to happen again anyway. It was a one-time thing. And this is typical of how we work in the world, right? Now, something happens, and then we overreact to it, and we've got to change all the rules to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Now, you could say to me, okay, Bob, well, that's fine that you say that, but what would keep the people from Puck Daddy from doing it again this year if they didn't change the rules? Because those are the guys that did it, right? The Puck Daddy people, they're the ones that got that started and got him voted in. But players like him don't even exist anymore. He was the last of his kind, right? I mean, that player is pretty much extinct now. What player just fights and really doesn't do much of anything else? Nobody. It's pretty much gone from the game. Let's move on. John Lintz says, since the team is playing like they are, is Bjorkstrand likely in Cleveland unless there's an injury? I would have to say right now, John, yeah, that's probably the case because he was up. He played when Foligno was hurt and couldn't maintain that spot after Foligno got back into the lineup. They didn't take anybody else out for him. So right now, yeah, he's a man in waiting, and he's got to wait in the minor leagues. Brian Paredes, did you receive any Christmas gifts from any of the Blue Jackets players or staff? Oh, I got my Jelly of the Month thing from the management, and no, I'm just kidding. Just the regular company card, that's all. From the players, come on. They don't owe me anything, nor would I ever expect anything. But thanks for asking, Brian. I appreciate that. Nate Orsini says, assuming the win streak continues, is the New Year's Eve matchup between the Wild and the Blue Jackets the biggest expansion matchup ever? I've got another question about this. Let me just find it so I can knock out these things. Killing two birds with one stone, as they say. Ben Novotny says, how excited are you for a battle of the unbeatens on New Year's Eve? Listen, gentlemen, okay, let's take a breath, step back, take a breath, and let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? The Winnipeg Jets are going to be playing in their building. They are going to play very tough. They have got a very good lineup, and it is not going to be a show-up-and-win game in Winnipeg, okay? Let's just clarify that. It's not going to be a show-up-and-win game. The minute you look beyond the Winnipeg Jets to the Minnesota Wild and two teams that could potentially have streaks of, 14 and 12, the minute you look by the team that sits in between you and that potential matchup, that's when you lose, okay? So let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's not I really don't even want to delve into it. I don't because I don't want to jinx it. And you may think that that's hogwash, that I don't jinx it by talking about it. But the fact of the matter is, that's what I think. And my superstitions say, shut your mouth. As The Rock would say, know your role and shut your mouth. But I hope we're talking about that. I mean, I will talk about this subject until you're ready to throw up about it come, what day? Friday. Because I forget what day today is. Today's Wednesday. Come Friday, if the Blue Jackets win in Winnipeg tomorrow and if the Wild is still on their streak and the Blue Jackets are still on their streak, I will more than gladly talk about this until you've just had enough and it's coming out your ears on Friday. So let's hope that we're having that conversation come Friday. Adam Chase Powell says, best year of my life. Blue Jackets are number 1 and should be in the playoffs at the same time my son is born. Thank the guys for me. Will do, Adam, and congratulations. And it should be a very happy home life for you. And it is nice. You know what? When I first started reading this, I thought, best year of your life ever because the Blue Jackets are number 1. And I love the fact that you're behind the team, and it's awesome. It's awesome what's going on right now. But you never want that to be the number 1 thing in people's lives. You want it to be something that supplements great things that are going on in people's lives. And then as I read through the rest of it, I saw Adam talking about his son being born. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's perfect. You have a baby, things are going great in your personal life, and oh, by the way, the team that you really root for and want to see doing well is sitting atop the league right now. So that, Adam, thanks for that. Thanks for sending that tweet, because that, to me, it is a great example of what I think it should be. The Blue Jackets and their success should be a supplement to the great things that are going on in your life already. And in your case, that's obviously what's going on there. So, again, congratulations to you. Bruce says, with this unreal streak, is there any area the Blue Jackets need to improve on, or do they just go by the words of Al Davis, just win, baby? Yeah, there are some areas they need to improve on. I thought their neutral zone play last night, and was it just because they came off the break and they were rusty? I don't know. But their neutral zone play last night wasn't as good as it has been in previous games, and it's helped them win a lot of games the way they played in the neutral zone. And it wasn't there last night. And listen, let's take the game against the Los Angeles Kings, the game against the Montreal Canadiens, and last night's game against the Bruins. If you look at those 3 games, they're being outshot all of a sudden, and I'm talking about being outshot by a bunch. Still winning the game, I get it. But all of a sudden those chances for the other team are starting to go up. That's something that cannot happen. The Blue Jackets have to stop that right in its tracks right now, okay? Hands down. And I know shots is misleading. Sometimes teams have shots and they're coming from safe areas, and those are never going to go into the net and all that jazz. I get it. I understand that. But it's just it hasn't been as tight in those 3 games. The Penguins game was fine, and they had great energy for that game. They were up for it. The other 3, there's been letdowns in different areas of the game. They've got to stop that right now. They go on this road trip and they have that same kind of, I don't want to say demeanor. That's not right. If they play the same way, if they play with those mistakes, they put themselves in jeopardy of not winning the games on the road. And winning away from home is something they've done very much, or very well, and very much so far this year. Jason Messick says, do you see Ryan Murray's game improving, regressing, or neither? Time on ice is down. Curious as to your take. To be honest with you, Jason, I thought I saw it regressing earlier in the season. A couple of weeks ago, I was head-scratching as to why he didn't seem to be playing up to his capability or up to what we're used to seeing coming from him. But to be honest with you, in the last couple of games, I think he's picked it up tremendously. Yes, his time on ice is down. Yes, he is a third-pair defenseman right now, but he's getting important minutes, and he's doing a good job. And I also think he's doing a very good job in bringing along the rookie Marcus Nudavara. I think that pair is turning out to be a very good pair, and there's chemistry there now. I noticed a couple times in last night's game, Nudavara making a short pass to Ryan Murray, or maybe even a little bit of a risky pass in the direction of Ryan Murray, but he knew Ryan Murray was going to be there. He knew that he could make that pass and that his defensive partner was going to be in the spot he was supposed to be. I see his game improving here, probably over the last 2 weeks, really starting to pick up, and that's great for the Blue Jackets because this guy's an important piece, right? I mean, he was a number 2 overall pick. He was a guy that you were projecting to be a top-pair defenseman. And even though he's not that right now, it doesn't matter because the team is winning. But if he's playing his game and he's on the third pairing, that just tells you how strong this defensive unit of the Columbus Blue Jackets is. So his game is certainly on the upswing, Jason. Boone's Goon says, where do you suppose the sock goes that disappears in the dryer? Very interesting question. I've found that sock before. I have found that sock that disappears in the dryer. You know where I normally find that sock? Still in the hamper, on the floor between the hamper and wherever the laundry basket was sitting. on the certain occasions where I think that I can carry everything in my arms because I'm too lazy to go get the laundry basket, which is downstairs, and I've got to bring it back upstairs. In those cases, I find that sock on the path from the hamper to the washing machine. So I think that's where it goes. Any of those places, those that I would check first. Jeff says, any concern about wearing Sergei Bobrovsky out as the season progresses? One-word answer, Jeff, no. Dan Jenkins says, how would you explain hockey to someone visiting from Costa Rica? My sister's visiting friend went to the game last night. I tried my best to explain it prior to the game. I was not at the game. Well, I'll tell you something, Dan. This is the most interesting question I've ever gotten, perhaps. Now, I've taken the liberty of looking up the most popular sports in Costa Rica. And no surprise, soccer is number one. You know what number two is? Bullfighting. So I would explain it as a combination of those two things. First of all, it's like soccer, where you're trying to move a puck instead of a ball up the playing surface, which is ice instead of grass, and it's a lot smaller. I get that. I understand. But you're trying to move it up as a unit and put it into a net, just like in soccer, okay? But it resembles bullfighting in the fact that there are people trying to run you over in the process, and you're trying to dance out of their way while maintaining possession of this puck while holding a stick. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's the only way that I can think of to put those two things together. And I hope you had a good explanation. I don't know if it was better than that. Actually, I hope it was better than that because that's probably a weak explanation of the whole thing. But I hope that friend had fun at the game. That's what I really hope. I hope that they, even if they didn't understand 100% of what was going on, I hope they had a good time in the atmosphere and that they got something out of it. The next question comes from Courtney Matthews, who says, does John Tortorella ever get excited about a win? Yes, he does. Is he going to make it clear to you or me? No, absolutely not. But yes, he does. I know he does. I see him on the bench when the game ends. He can't hide. Gary Weinheimer, great to see the winning streak continue, but what's with 77 shots on goal in the last two games? That's exactly what I was talking about earlier, Gary. That is a little bit alarming to me, the fact that all of a sudden the other teams are starting to get more opportunities to shoot the puck. Are they all scoring chances? No, they're not. But the fact that those numbers are tilting a little bit in the last few games is a red flag to me and a little bit of a cause for concern. They've got to clean it up. Justin's question, why are you so damn amazing? Justin, all I can say is it's in my DNA. Steve Duncan says, what do you feel that John Tortorella has done that has changed the culture of the Blue Jackets? This is a very easy question for me to answer, Steve, and it's a very simple thing. He has changed the mindset, and he has done it very quickly. I told this story before. I'm going to tell it again. Last year, I think it was about this time, there was some contest winners that came into the arena in the evening. They got to have dinner back in the lunchroom where the players get fed after practices and after games. And it was a small group. It was 8 to 10 people. And John Tortorella came in and was speaking to these people. And he opened it up to questions. He let them ask whatever they wanted to. And I'm telling you this, he was very candid in his answers. At that time, I was like, wow, I can't believe he told them that. And geez, if they start tweeting out what he just said or telling their friends and that gets out, that's a major revelation, just some of the things that he was saying. But he was being honest. He was being himself. He was being asked questions, and he was giving open and honest answers, as he always does. So right after that, my wife and I talked to him for a while, and he told me, he goes, look, we got a lot of problems in this room, and we're going to fix them. We're going to fix every one of them. And when you look in his eyes and he tells you that, and he's very sincere, and he didn't say it mean, he didn't say it with any kind of an edge. There was just, a hardness in his eyes that said, I really mean this. We're going to change all of this. So he knew, and he knew coming into this thing what he had to do. He knew that he was coming into a franchise, and he's talked about this year. He was coming into a franchise where there was a lot of entitlement, and guys felt that they should play just because they've been here for so long or because they've been in the league for so long. And he knew that he had to come in and shake it up, and that he had to be the bad guy right off the bat. And he had to do things like scratching Scott Hartnell as a healthy scratch. He had to scratch Ryan Johansson when he was here. He had to do those types of things to get his message across. And the only guy that he had to carry that message was Brandon Dubinsky, because he had Brandon in New York with the Rangers, and they both admit that when they left there, or when Torts left there, it was just not a very good relationship between those two. Or who left first, Brandon or Torts, doesn't matter. But whenever that relationship with the Rangers dissolved for them, they were not the best of friends. But all of a sudden, John Tortorella comes to the Blue Jackets, and the first thing he does is seek out Brandon Dubinsky, because he knows that Dubinsky's got to be that guy to carry the message for him at the beginning until he can dig in, get to know the other players, and have the heart-to-heart talks with them that they very much need. So he has changed the mindset. He really has. He has this team acting like an NHL team. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was Tom Reed in the Dispatch wrote about the fact that there's no music being played in the dressing room after wins, like there used to be. Like it was I used to go in there and say, "Welcome to Club CBJ," because the music would be blasting. The PR guy would turn it down so that we could do interviews. The players would complain that they were turning it down. But last night, I'm standing in there with Scott Hartnell, and he says, "Listen, we're just taking it with a very business-like approach. We're not over the moon celebrating tonight that we got this win." And he's saying it in almost a dead quiet room. So what he has done is he has changed the intangibles. And, Steve, that's not an easy thing to do, to come into a situation and get essentially the same group of people to change everything that they had believed in and everything that they thought was making them successful, to get them to change all of that and find out that by changing, they are even more successful. It's hard. It's really hard. And that's why I think this guy is a master motivator. Does everybody like him? No. I'm sure they don't. I'm sure there are players in there that probably do not like to play for him. And I bet you the reason is that he expects and demands things out of them that they have never been expected to do before. I'll tell you a little secret. When the Pittsburgh Penguins were in here the other day, I was talking to somebody about that very thing. And this person was talking about Brandon Saad, who's a Pittsburgh guy. And he said, "You know what? I think that he was put off a little bit because he has somebody asking him to do things that he's never been asked to do before by a coach. Expectations he's never had." And I'll tell you what happens with some of these guys, and it happens in all sports. But from the time that they're young, they stand out. And they get treated just a little bit differently than everybody else on the team, right? They've got more talent, and a coach can see it, so a coach is going to take care of that player because that player is going to potentially win me a lot of games. So they let him go, and they develop a little bit differently from other guys. And then all of a sudden, they find themselves on a team or in a situation where a coach is saying, "Hey, you shouldn't be treated differently than anybody else." As a matter of fact, John Tortorella talked about this about 2 weeks ago. He said that he went to Brandon Saad and he said, "Listen, you've got a lot of things already, 2 Stanley Cup rings, a lot of money, and you played with the Chicago Blackhawks, and those players like Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane and Marian Hossa and Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook, they taught you a lot. They taught you a lot about how to play the game. How about giving some of that back? Give it back to the young teammates here. Show them how to play the game. Show them what it takes to be a winner." And to me, ever since that conversation, I can't tell you what day it was, but I can give you a ballpark because Brandon Saad turned into a completely different player after that day. He went from a guy that was, tenacious on the puck, but maybe kind of floating around at times without the puck. He went from that to a guy that is a beast, and he's everywhere, and he's forcing turnovers, and he's back-checking, and he's been great. So that's the key, and that's the hard part. It's easy to do X's and O's for a coach. The hard part is getting inside the head of the player, getting the player to respond to what you're trying to get out of them, getting them to perform above the level that they think that they can perform. And Torch talks about this all the time. He feels that his job is to get a player to do things they don't think that they can do. And he's been able to do that. He is a master motivator. Does it burn out after a period of time? Maybe it does. I guess in hockey it always does with coaches. But right now, they're buying it, he's selling it, and they're winning. And that is all that matters. Thank you for another group of great questions on this mailbag edition of the show today. We're going to head off to Winnipeg, and tomorrow it'll be the Blue Jackets and the Winnipeg Jets, 8 o'clock tomorrow night from the MTS Center. And I'll have a game day edition of CBJ in 30 for you from Winnipeg tomorrow, unless I freeze to death the moment that I get there. So until then, I'm Bob McElligott saying so long.
Out!